cover how to train your sales team, how your sales team can take advantage of relationship selling, and how to convert leads into prospects. Included in today's presentation will really be 6 succinct points. The first one will be the professional sales presentation. Understanding the sales process is so important. It is your game plan. Secondly, we're going to talk about probing techniques, how to build rapport, need satisfaction, problem solving, and asking the tough questions. Third will be listening, how to be a good listener, the ability to align the customer with the greatest product available. Then we're going to talk about how to connect features and benefits, how to translate desires to needs, how to relate features and benefits, and how to relate benefits back to the needs. Next, how to handle objections. The ability to handle objections and overcome them is of the utmost importance. And lastly, how to close the sale. First of all, great people, great salespeople are not born. They are dedicated to greatness. So it's something you can learn. You know, I always say we hire people on intelligence, empathy, and enthusiasm. Those are 3 things you can't teach a person, but you can teach them the techniques of being a great salesperson, just like, and you'll hear me say this again and again, just like a psychiatrist or psychologist that learns to identify people's problems and help work them out. So a great salesperson becomes an expert, becomes a consultant, an advisor, a counselor, a guide, and a mentor. It's somebody that you can trust, and that's so important, that feature of trust. So let's start with the professional sales presentation. The professional sales presentation, and it's not the presentation of yesteryear, of 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. It's not giving a presentation speaking. It has different components. First component, the introduction or the greeting. It's making a relationship. During this process, during this hello, you have to think as if you're meeting somebody in school or you're going to date somebody. It's really first impressions and what those first impressions mean. Then it's qualifications of asking the questions, listening and determining needs, building trust. We all know that nobody buys from somebody that they don't trust. And personalizing it so that you have common ground. You always want to find out that common piece of ground. And then we'll have 3 different presentations. The first is the verbal presentation. As you're sitting and talking to somebody, you're telling them about your community, the concept, the structure, the services, the benefits, and the steps to become a resident. And those steps to become a resident are your first trial balloon. You then do a visual presentation. So it's the second time you're telling them about the community. Now, this is a give and take. This is not just a one-piece presentation, because you're constantly asking questions and responding. But the visual presentation can be in wall graphics, it can be in a presentation book, it can be in brochures. You're telling them what you're showing them what you just told them. You're visually showing them what you just told them. And the third is the physical presentation, the tour. You know, people don't always remember what we tell them, and you may think you're repeating yourself, but you're really not. You are reinforcing it. And as you know, sometimes on that physical tour, the presentation may not be as nice as the pictures or the discussion of it. And then the close. The close really started at your beginning, at your hello, and at your probing, and we'll talk about that. And lastly, the follow-up, because we're going to talk about closing, not just closing and moving in, but the same methods can be used to close a sale or to close the first appointment to get the second appointment or the second follow-up. So closing in a nutshell begins the minute the salesperson and the prospect meet. You know, you have that first date and that first impression, that starts to set you up. Along with the normal qualifying comes the analysis of the prospect, you know, understanding them, their attitude, and for need for moving that prospect into the friendly, talkative mode. If you get that prospect talking, they will tell you what you need to close. I know so many people say, give me the closing techniques. These are the closing techniques to understand your prospect and listen. And so we're going to talk about how to open a call. First of all, establish a customer-centered purpose. You need to get attention. And be flexible on how well do you know your constraints. In other words, you know, say to a person, if they're visiting, welcome here, tell me, do you have any time constraints that I should be aware of before I start? And you're going to have to adjust yourself to that because you want to be within what they need. And then gain the customer agreement for you to ask questions and take notes. So many people don't take notes when they're with the client, and you really want to. And if you welcome them and you sit down, we're not tour guides. We're not taking them right around to walk around the community. Sit them down to talk to them and ask them, do you mind if I take a few notes while we talk? So let's go on to that customer-centered trust. It is so important because the difference in today's sales is that you're really not talking all the time. In fact, you're talking very little of the time, 25 to 30% of the time. But you need to get that person to talk about themselves. So trust-based selling requires that the salesperson demonstrates in both good and bad economic times that their only priority is to help the prospect find an appropriate solution to his or her problem. How many times do you hear somebody get into a lot of discussion about their life and about what other people are doing and about the community and what everybody's participating in, what everybody else likes? That's not the beginning of developing relationships. It's focusing on the prospect and getting them to open up to you. Just getting the sale is not the agenda. The focus is on consistently on the prospect. Let's go to the probing opening questions. You know, many times we call this the discovery. So this is the first part. The most valuable sales skill you can master is the ability to ask questions. And again, if you went to a doctor, if you went to a psychiatrist, they can't treat you unless they know what your situation is, what hurts, what's wrong. And it doesn't take just one question to get that. You have to dig deep. So what we need to do is what Rudyard Kipling said, I keep serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names were what and why and when and how and where and who. This is something I tell you to develop a cheat slip on. It really is super important. So take the 6 words there and develop some questions. What brought you here today? What hobbies do you have? What do you do? What did you do? Did you work? Why do you think this is a hard decision for you? Why not? When would you like to visit? When would you like to move? When would you like to come back and have lunch with us? Questions like this. How did you hear about us? Here's the how. How do you spend the day? how are you going to spend the holidays? This is a great time to start selling. You know, many people say, well, we can't sell before the holidays. Everybody says we're going to talk to you after the holidays. We're too busy. That's the time to form the relationships and understand what they're doing. That's getting personal. Let's get personal with everybody. Where do they come from? Where is their family? Where do they shop? Where do they go for entertainment? These are the where questions. And who? Who takes care of the lawn? Who takes care of the laundry? Who drives if you don't drive? Who's involved in your decision making? All of these are excellent questions, and you need to develop what you most feel comfortable with. I know people have been this for years, and they do it naturally. But if it doesn't come naturally at first, or if you think maybe you're in a rut, keep developing questions. Sit with your sales team and develop additional questions. And when you're on the phone, have those questions. And actually, you can have them on a little slip with you when you're taking notes with the person. It could be down the side of the piece of paper so that you know, so that you learn all about them. We have what we call a closing sheet. And on the closing sheet, if you ask these questions, you will know the person. And once you get to know the person and know what's important to your prospect, what are their interests, what are their backgrounds, hobbies, desires, and dreams, I call it know the person's PhDs. Their plans, their desires, and their hopes, or their plans, their hopes, and desires, excuse me. Their plans, their hopes, and desires. Know all about them, and so how you can help them. God said that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, and it's said because it's twice as hard to listen as it is to talk, but that we should listen twice as much as we talk. So the first step in winning the prospects is to make them like you. One of the surest ways to make them like you is to be a good listener. Have you ever gone out with a friend, with a couple, with a date, and you came back home and you said, I had such a wonderful time? Well, you didn't probably have such a wonderful time or think they were so good if they spent that whole time talking to you, or 80% of that time talking to you. You had that good time and you want to be with them again because they listened and they were really involved and they cared about what you were saying. That's what you need to do with your prospects. You sort of have to close out your other worries of the day. So there are 4 key elements of good listening, and there are a lot of different exercises you can do with this. Once again, it can be taught. It doesn't come naturally to some people. So one is hear the message. You know, it's so hard for us many times to want to interrupt. You know, somebody says to you, my son is coming back and he's going to live with me. Instead of asking more questions, hear it out. Let the person talk. You know, it's really going to be hard for me when he comes back, and I don't know what I'm going to do, and I don't want to be a burden on him later. So hear the message completely. Interpret the message. In other words, don't just hear it and not understand it, but you can ask questions to then evaluate the message. And the questions you can ask, easily ask, how do you feel about it? Tell me more about how that situation will work. Or as a favorite client of mine says, what else? Tell me what else. So interpret, evaluate, respond. After you have feel you've heard everything and they really are pouring their hearts out to you. Do what you call reflective listening. Reflective listening. And that is, you've taken it all in, and then you say, let me make sure I understand you. And you repeat it back to them. You summarize it, what they've said. Sometimes they're going to shake their head, no, you didn't get it. But sometimes they're going to shake their head, yes, you understand. I understand your son is moving back in with you. You're nervous about being a burden on him. It's going to be hard on all of you. Is that what you're worried about? Make sure that you don't just listen and move on to another topic that you wanted to do in your presentation, but that you really listen and that you state it back to them and let it sink in. Okay. This is really interesting. Listening skills. In the first grade, we listen 90% of the time. So when you're 6-year-old, listen 90% of the time. By the time we're senior in high school, most students listen 28% of the time. Listening is a learned skill. You've got to practice it. The retention is 90% forgotten unless it is really important, and then they lose half of 75% of it. So if you can imagine that you're going to be talking and making a presentation, and you think you've said wonderful things and you said you're convincing them, they forget 75% of what, if it's good, if maybe 90% of what you say. They do remember if you particularly relate it to them. And that is, you can't relate to them, to their situation, unless you understand them and unless you've asked the questions. You know, we all do some marketing. And in marketing, marketing is impersonal. Our ads, our direct mails, they can't relate directly to the person. We try to make the benefits to the person, but it's generic. But in sales, it's not generic. So sales has to get more personal. Business people spend 45% of their time listening, 32% of the time speaking, 14% of the time reading, and 9% of the time writing. You're a business person. So this is the same with you. 1/3 of your time should be speaking. Some people say 25% of your time should be speaking. The other should be listening to your and probing and understanding and taking notes. Okay, a few more tips on listening skills, because the probing and listening are extremely important. Limit your own talking. Yeah, many salespeople just talk too much. They want to tell their situation, somebody else's situation. Limit your own talking. And by the way, tape record yourself on a telephone, or use one of the call tracking systems that tape record you, and you could just listen to yourself and judge yourself. See if you're doing it, and try to slow down yourself. Be genuinely interested, genuinely interested. Turn off the rest of your worries in the world and genuinely focus on that person. Take notes. It helps you to focus. Ask questions to confirm your understanding. Again, that's reflective listening. Asking questions and having them, what else? Tell me more about that. How does that make you feel? Okay. Look and listen for buying signals. People will give you buying signals in their discussions. Maybe it's, if I moved in, I wouldn't have to worry about being a burden on my son. That's a buying signal. They're really they're talking themselves into their own closing. Use interjections. First of all, if they're talking a lot, it's going to help you from falling asleep. But, you know, say, I see, oh, tell me more. Even just an oh will work to let them know you're listening. Turn off your worries and react to ideas. If they make a suggestion, if they tell you something, you've got to think about it, and you don't have to give it an answer right now, but you do have to react and let them know that repeat it, let them know that you're hearing them. So it's sort of a circle. Ask, listen, paraphrase, ask again. It's building relationship, it's friendly, it's being interested. Okay, so we've talked about probing, we've talked about listening. Let's talk about benefits and features. Okay, these are some of the features, and how many times, maybe you've done it, maybe you've seen somebody do it, that they walk somebody through your main dining room and they said, and this is the dining room. It's like, I didn't recognize that this was a dining room with tables and tablecloths and spoons and forks and dishes and glasses. This is the dining room. This is the emergency call system. This is the library, book filled with rooms. This is so I say that you have to say, what is the benefit? I say, so what? And that's, if those of you who have been in my training sessions, you know we've walked around on our foreheads with the words, so what? And basically, the so what is the benefit to me? What does that mean to me? So you need to practice, and once again, you need to learn the person. The dining room. Perhaps I'm walking around with an adult child, and I'm showing them the community, or I'm telling them about the community. And I can say, you know, one of the things is, you told me that Mom doesn't get dressed, she doesn't eat right. Mom would be eating with friends all the time. She'd have companionship. It's a well-balanced meal. That's a benefit. So well-balanced meal is a benefit. Companionship is a benefit. You told me you're worried about Mom driving to get her groceries when it's bad weather. She doesn't get out. You don't have to worry anymore. That's a benefit to the adult child. You don't have to worry. Mom is sitting alone in her house dress. Now she's getting dressed. Now she's not alone. She has people to talk to and keeps her more aware. We've seen people that completely come out of their shell because they're not eating dinner or watching the 6 o'clock news anymore, or maybe it was the 4 o'clock news, but the early bird. The emergency call system. Most of you have emergency call systems. The benefit to me as a daughter may be that I don't have to worry about Dad being in the apartment alone. That I don't have to worry if he needs someone he can call. So the benefit to me as a daughter is I don't have to worry, is that he's safe. The benefit to my dad may be completely different because maybe my dad is fighting this tooth and nail, and he's had all his life he's been in control. He's been a CEO. He's run a company, and he doesn't want. I don't want to not worry. I don't want. I'm not like that. He says. Maybe the salesperson would say the benefit of the emergency call system to you is that you're always in control. If you need someone, you call, somebody will respond to you immediately. But if you don't need, you can just leave it, but you have that control. So each thing, and you tell sort of how it works. You tell the feature, how it works, when the emergency call system, when you pull it, it goes directly to the front desk. Someone will call you first. If you don't answer, they will come to your apartment. Now you say the benefits to them. Dining room, you may say when the hours are open, the variety of meals, the benefit to you. Library, I've seen somebody walk an adult child through a library, show them this library, we have so many books, and you take it out on an honor system, and she said, my mother's legally blind. Well, if you didn't know the person, you can't do the benefit. You're just a generic benefit. So it's important. And by the way, people don't remember facts. Remember I said 75%, 90% they forget? People don't remember facts, but they remember what it means to them. So that daughter may remember, Mom, I don't have to worry about Mom not getting her food when it snows. She's going to remember that part, not necessarily the facts, but what it means to them. Okay, so features and benefits. The feature-benefit connection is a solution. People buy on benefits, not on features. I'm sure you've heard people buy on emotion, not on facts. So the emotion is the benefit part of it. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about handling objections. Somebody once told me that they love objections because objections mean you're interested. You wouldn't give me an objection unless you were interested. Objections either stop or go you. You have to stop or go. We need to provide a solution to what these objections are. So our goal is to eliminate the obstacle, and objections become then opportunities for you. Now, I've been doing this for 34 years and working with sales counselors nationally and internationally. And over the years of doing training, I've heard so many responses to the objections. You know, I'm not ready yet, it's too much money, people are too old, it's too far away, I don't like the view, you name it. And it came out with a pamphlet of answers to all of these questions, all of these objections. But then I found that people were just doing rote presentations, rote responses, and they weren't really listening, and they weren't, it didn't come out like somebody who cared about you. And if I haven't said it before, no one knows how much you care. No one cares how much you know, excuse me, unless they know how much you care. Say it again. No one cares how much you know. They don't care how much knowledge you have and how smart you are, unless they know how much you care about them. So what we want to do is the 6 steps to handling objections, and practice it on any objections. Hear it out, feed it back, question it, answer it, confirm it, and go on. They teach psychiatrists this. They teach psychologists this. When people tell you objections, people say it doesn't work. Hear it out. Let's try it on the #1 objection I hear all over the country. I'm not ready yet. Hear it out. I'm not ready yet. You know that moment of silence, that's so important? Because usually that moment of silence, the person will go on to explain. Yes, I'm not ready yet. You know, I still drive. I think my son's going to move back with me. I still like to cook sometimes. So hear it out. The last thing you hear, feed it back. You cook a lot? You still like to cook a lot? And if that silence on that first thing of I'm not ready yet is too long, don't make it uncomfortable, feed it back. You're not ready yet? Question it. Same way as feeding it back. Again, the last thing that you hear, or the subject that you hear. Again, it's another way of saying, tell me more about it. What else? How does that make you feel? Then after you think they've talked about it and they've gotten it out, at least 3 times you've asked. So you hear it, you feed it back once, you question it, and if you think you need to go further, you let them get it all out, all their concerns. Then answer it. And now here's where the trick comes in. I find the easiest way to answer some of these objections is the 3F theory. It's called the feel, found, felt. I understand how you feel. When Ralph moved in to the community, he felt the same way. Feel, felt, found, excuse me. Feel, felt, found. He felt the same way. He was really concerned about moving in. Let me tell you what he found. He found he didn't have to cook as much anymore. He found a group of men friends. He found that life was easier. He smiled more. He didn't worry about the snow. He didn't worry about driving. Now you stop and you listen, because the person is either going to be shaking their head yes, meaning they understand, they hear you, they agree with you. Oh, so you've confirmed it. And you can say, does that sound like that could be what happened? And then you go on to the next stage or the next topic. So you move on. If they are answering, if they are shaking their head no, then they haven't confirmed it, then they don't agree. Go right back up to the top. Hear it out. Tell me more about it. So you keep doing that until you come to a point of agreement. By the way, you can not only use this with objections when you're working. Try it with your friend, your spouse, your partner, with an objection. You know, I don't want to go to the movies. Well, maybe they didn't want to go to that movie, or maybe they didn't want to go to that time movie, or maybe you don't know what it is. Let them hear it out. Tell them more. Okay. Closing in a nutshell. Remember at the beginning we said closing begins the minute the salesperson and the prospect meet. Along with the normal qualifying comes the analysis of the prospect and his or her attitude and the need for moving that prospect in the friendly, talkative mode. So now we say, again, it's closing in a nutshell. It's only when the prospective buyer sees you as a decision helper and a friendly source of information that he or she opens up and returns a friendliness. I know that not everybody returns a friendliness. Some people say, just the facts, ma'am. There are different ways to work with people of different personalities, and that's a whole other personality program. But what you really need to know is if you took the time to make the person a friend and listen to them, be talked to, you can call them back anytime. People are telling me, I can't call them as soon as I'm bothering them. A friend doesn't bother you if they're calling you. And as long as you have that relationship with them and you know, what are you planning for the holidays? Are the kids coming in? Is anybody, who's doing the cooking? Whatever it is, a nice conversation will be well received. Okay. The ABCs of closing. Always be closing. The ABCs of closing. By the way, there's also the ABCs of marketing, which is always be creative. But the ABCs of closing doesn't mean you are a hard-nosed salesperson. I don't think you heard me. I was pounding on the desk. You're not a hard-nosed, and somebody from actually one of the salespeople in Canada I was training about 20-some years ago said to me, it's not a hard sale, it's a heart sale. And I've repeated that always. If I ran into the person again or if they were in the call, thank you. But it definitely is a hard sale. So the only sale you close is the one you get in response to your closing questions. Everything else is order taking or mere conversation. And I would tell you that in the in the good times, a lot of people are order taking. And as times got tougher and competition got more, these people have been weeded out because we're not order taking anymore. And if you have competition coming in, and I don't know of too many areas in the country that don't, then you have to be closing. You have to make the sale. You can't just accept it. Okay, so let's talk about a few types of close. And, you know, it sounds like it's a hard professional close, but probably if you've been in the industry a little bit, you've been doing this anyway. You just don't know that it has a name. But if you start to listen to your calls, or you start to evaluate your tours, you have to think back and say, did I close them? Did I attempt to close them? Well, you attempted to close them back when you did the verbal presentation. You should have done it again with the visual presentation, because in your presentation manual should have been an application or a reservation sheet. That would have been a second trial close. And of course, as you tour them around and you're coming back, there's a close again. So let me talk through some of them. The Ben Franklin close is actually my favorite, and probably for a couple reasons. Ben Franklin was from Philadelphia, and I'm a Philadelphian. And Ben Franklin was very analytical, which actually I am also. But when he had a decision to make, he made a T-bar. And, you know, if you make a T with your hands, and he said, on this side, this is the reason I should, and on this side, this is the reason I shouldn't. You know, sometimes I call it what would you gain and what would you give up. You can actually sit with your prospect and make a T-bar and say, tell me what you would gain by a move and what you would give up by a move. You're basically doing the Ben Franklin close, or sometimes it's the summary close. You're just summarizing all the reasons that they told you this would be a right move. So you may say, the house is too much. I don't want to do all the shopping and cooking anymore. You're writing this all down on one side of that T-bar, or you're just talking to them about it. You want to do this while you can still enjoy it. You don't want to go through another winter. All the reasons that you can think of during your time talking to them or with them that they said this would be good, what they would gain. And then when it's time for them to write the other side of the T-bar, what they would give up, it's your time to be silent. You help them with the first thinking of all the things they gain. Your time to be silent. And maybe they're going to say, I'd give up a lot of space. They talk. Let them talk it through, and hear what they're, how many rooms they use in their house, what's important to them, all that. And then at the end, you may say to them, I understand how you feel. Mrs. Jones, who moved in 6 months ago, felt the same way. Let me tell you what she found, because I interviewed her after she had lived here a few months, and I asked her what she felt she gave up. And she said she gave up dusting a lot of things that she had never used, or she hadn't used in many years. So the Ben Franklin close summarizes, is a summary close of what you gain. The alternative close is almost like a contained choice. Would you rather the apartment with the east view, or would you rather the apartment with the west view on the first floor? An alternative. Contained choice, one or the other. If they're shaking their head, you go back to the 6 steps of overcoming objections. Hear it out, feed it back, question it, answer it, confirm it, and go on. Okay, the assumptive close is really easy. It's a conversation with them and say, when you move in here, would you like to be at the early dining time or the later? You're putting them in that assumptive mood, and they will sometimes follow along. And if they don't, and if you have an objection, you go right back over how to overcome objections. But make sure you leave them with a close. Impending event close. Well, I like, sometimes you call that the impending doom, whether it's don't wait until you're not healthy enough to enjoy it, or don't wait until that apartment is no longer available, or don't wait until the incentive is no longer available. The impending doom. Isolation close. If I isolate one thing that would stop them closing. If I could show you how your piano fit in that living room comfortably, is this the apartment you would choose? And if it's no, then you're going back to start hearing out their objections again. If it's yes, then you've isolated, then you know. Let's start a reservation on this. I'm going to come to your house. I'm going to do a floor plan for you, and whatever. You've isolated it. Often that's not the real reason. That's a good reason for the real reason, but it may not be the real reason. The 3F we already talked about, feel, felt, found. And the direct close is as simple as you can be. From everything you've told me, this should be your choice. Why don't we start the paperwork? It's as simple as it can be. Okay. No one need fear to be accused of high pressure if his or her sales meet one simple test, the satisfaction of the buyer. If the buyer is glad that he or she made the purchase, his or her approval of your role in the transaction is automatically applied. I have been in numerous communities throughout the country and internationally. I have been a salesperson in my early years in several communities, and I've never walked through a community where a person didn't greet you and say, this was a good move for me. I'm glad. And it really gives you great satisfaction. This industry, all of it gives you great satisfaction, because if you believe that you're doing that the person is choosing a better lifestyle, then that gives you the satisfaction. And guess what? I don't think you should be in the industry unless you believe in the industry. Okay. So just don't sit and wait. Be proactive. People won't call you. You've got to start making a move. This product is rarely bought unless it's need-driven. It usually is sold. Let me go through a few checklists, and you can get this, of course, later. A salesperson's checklist for success. How do I prepare? Please, please don't make phone calls without doing a pre-planning phone call, knowing what you're saying, especially on your hot leads. How many times do I hear somebody calling and saying, do you have any more questions, or do you want to reserve? And the person on the other end of the line is lost. So yes or no, or, you know, they're lost. It's not a relationship. Prepare what your next step is. How do I build rapport? How do I probe and clarify? How do I establish agreement? How do I handle objections? How good is my product knowledge? And by the way, today it's more than product knowledge you have to have. You have to know lots of things. At one time, is you just have to know your product you're selling, but you have to know how to help them get their house sold, how to help them clean out the basement and the attic, and how to help them pack and move and get a lot of things. So it's not just your own product. How professional is my presentation? Do I use the ABCs of closing? Do I keep good notes and records? I've seen people say, I've got it in my head, I remember, but let me tell you, after you've talked to 100 or 200 people, and you should be talking to 300 people in a month, you may not remember those notes, those records. So keep good records. Do I follow up? Personal notes, phone calls. do something, wow, out of the usual. When somebody says, oh, that's really nice, they were so nice. Do I evaluate my presentations after each one? How many calls do I make a day? People ask us this all the time. The standard in the industry hasn't changed. It's been an average of 15 calls a day, 75 a week, 300 a month. That is a base of completed calls. Voice to voice, not I left a message. Do I practice goal setting? Do I get maximum referrals? Do you actually ask for referrals? Not just anyone you know, but how anyone on your street, anyone in your church? Is there any of your relatives that live nearby that may like this too? How many sales have I made today? I tell you, I do marketing audits, and some of the salespeople can't tell me how many sales they made in a month or a year. So, but keep records. Persistence. 80% of all sales are made after the 5th call. 48% of salesmen give up after the 1st call. 25% give up after the 2nd call. 12% make 3 calls and stop. 5% quit after the 4th call. A mere 10% keep on calling. To this 10% go 80% of all the sales. Don't be afraid to call. If you've made a good relationship, marketing can help give you additional reasons to call, but it's that relationship that only you, only the salesperson can make. The salesperson is the only one in all of your organization that can bring in the dollars, and that's through not only the product and the promotions and the pricing, but it's through personal contact. Follow-up is the name of the game. Our prospects would not visit us if they didn't need to. We don't cold call. Most places I've worked with do not cold call anyway. The person has at some time asked for information, or their family has asked for information. A few last things. First of all, our markets have all changed. The marketing and sales are becoming more and more challenging. The consumer is more and more savvy. They are knowing everything from the internet before they even come into you. Have you changed your sales strategy? You have to quit accepting average. It's good to great, and now it's not. You can't be good anymore. You have to be great. You have to be prospect-centered. You have to study your prospect and know all about them. You have to instill confidence and build trust. And part of that is by being knowledgeable, and part of that is by listening and caring. You have to be persistent and flexible and think outside the box. It's not just one way, or we never did that before, we've never allowed. Think outside the box and follow up. It takes a good coach, and it takes a lot of teamwork to be successful in this industry. Eugene O'Neill said, a man's work is in danger of deteriorating when he thinks he has found the one best formula for doing it. If he thinks that, he is likely to feel that all he needs is merely to go on repeating himself. So long as a person is searching for better ways of doing his work, he's fairly safe. You who have attended this webinar are searching for better ways to do your work, so you're fairly safe, and you're getting from good to great. It's not already there. Okay, that's it.
Well, thank you, Barbara. We do have a couple questions here.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to read them to me, Robert, because I somehow don't get that bar.
That's no problem. So one of the questions that was sent in asks, how do you deal with a complex family situation? In other words, who do you address in a presentation? Do you address a senior, or do you address their adult child? And could you make sure to have that contact info up there?
Yeah, I was just trying to get the questions up, but okay, let me just put my, let's get that, okay. If you're talking to the adult child, obviously you're working with them, but I would always want to know, tell me about their parents and their awareness of the situation. If you have both adult child and the senior, is that what we're saying? That both adult child and senior are in the in your meeting? I would try in all instances to talk to the senior themselves, and I would say to the adult child to actually tell them, let's talk. I'd like to talk with Mom and see what she thinks. When you talk with the senior, with the adult child, you have two sales to do. You have the sale of them, the adult child, and the sale of the senior. Usually when you talk to the senior, you have one sale to do because if they're happy, their children are usually more than willing to go along with it. And not too many people, no matter that become adults, want somebody to tell them what to do, and that includes your parents. They don't want their children to tell them what to do. So if they think the salesperson is working directly with them, or if they are, and listens to them and cares what they think, I think that's really the first step.
Excellent. And we have one further question. Somebody just wants to know whether you have any recommended books on sales or further resources that they can distribute to their sales staff.
Yes, there's always the book Good to Great, and that's more generic. There is the book, The Little Red Book of Selling, and God, that's been around for some years, updated, but The Little Red Book of Selling is an excellent book for general sales programs. And there's also books called Sales Questions. And once again, you have to translate them into the generic questions, so translate them into those kind of questions that you would ask.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Barbara, for that presentation. Again, that was Barbara Kleger of Kleger Associates. This presentation will be available on our website, retirementhomes.com, and at youtube.com/retirementhomes. Next month, mark your calendars for Wednesday, December 12th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, when we host Jonathan Seldiger of InTouchLink, who will share insights on how to use innovations to boost census at your community and boost profitability. Once again, check retirementhomes.com for information on that webinar, or contact me at robert@retirementhomes.com for all details. Have a great